Hello, Flawless family. Welcome back. We have the privilege and the opportunity to once again meet with Reggie. For those that are watching for the first time on our YouTube channel platform, make sure you check out our Instagram at Flawless Foundation for the first time. Reggie and I were able to have a deep dive into a conversation. You're not going to want to miss that. But we're here once again to dive into some new topics, some fresh and brand new topics. Before we get into all of that, you know how we start things off, Reggie. How are you really doing right now?
I love the question and I love the emphasis. I am tired. Man,
Mm.
I usually don't drink caffeine, but I had a cappuccino yesterday and that kept me up. And I had it early, but it kept me up and then I had a hard time getting to sleep and then this morning got woken up by a terrible dream. It's just like I know it's not real, but I saw some folks who aren't living in those dreams, and it's just always like, oh, and and yeah, so like that just threw my morning off. But I got in the gym, I got to move around, so that kind of centered me a little bit. But yeah, I'm tired, but here I'm present.
Yeah, once again, I appreciate, you being honest. That's what that question is for. So I'm glad that you were, pretty honest. And dreams, that's a new level
Mm,
of things.
yeah,
But I love how you kind of already referenced working out, right? And I think that's a great transition. You've accomplished so much in your life already. You're first gen college graduate from a prestigious university, a Division I athlete in the toughest conference, SEC, a
put the
successful,
respect. Yeah,
and you did it the hard way at that, right? I believe you said you walked on, right? If I'm
yes, sir.
and still managed to get on the field and play and ball. A business entrepreneur, and now you're transitioning to mental health advocacy, all before hitting 30, right? You're on the younger side of things. Well,
Well, that
you're
was all before 30. I'm 34 now, so yeah, yeah.
so I mean, it goes to show the type of accomplishments, that dedication you've had to this point in your life. Can you just walk us through your path to success and your ambition and your ability to kind of accomplish a lot of these things?
Man, yeah, I can try. I was. It's funny. I was just listening to a talk that I was doing with another guy not too long ago, and we were talking about success and just the drive to do things. And I honestly look back, I don't feel until maybe like writing a book, I didn't feel like I had done anything extraordinary. Like a
Mm,
book is a big feat, like especially like a longer book over 200 pages. Like that's a big feat. But like before that, it just felt like I I had this intuition of right and wrong, and I wanted to walk in right more times than wrong. Not to
mm,
say that I didn't make any mistakes because I'm human, but the choice when it came down to the choices, is what I did. And so um early on, it started with education. Education was emphasized at home. Neither of my parents graduated from high school, but my parents were very smart. My mom, she's the one who raised me, and she made sure that when I showed up, I knew what I was gonna be faced with when it came to the classroom. And so early on, that meant honors classes and advance and talks about giving me skip to another grade and all of that because I was so advanced in school. And that was, kind of like the compound effect when you're already getting fed more work, more challenging work, and it just helps you propel you. And before I knew it, I was enrolling in a private school where, I mean, the workload, the things that I was being exposed to, it was light years from what I was experiencing at the public school that I was going to prior to that. And it was a lot. It was a lot, but it instilled a lot of even it reinforced hard work. It reinforced staying committed to a goal. And that opened up the doors to go to Vanderbilt University and beyond. But on the other side of that, there was this push in athletics. I grew up in the hood, and like we were handed a ball as soon as we were born. Like football, basketball, those were my sports. And then I ran track, which was probably my best sport. But those things kept me grounded, kept me sane. and I did well in those. I did well in those throughout my life, and when you combine the sports and the athletics, it helped me. Vanderbilt, I graduated, went to the Owen Graduate School of Business at Vanderbilt, and got a master's degree in accountancy, and started with the Big Four with Deloitte and Touche,
Mm,
and that was cool. I didn't necessarily see myself doing accounting work or doing I was in external audit. I didn't see myself doing that long term, but I knew that it was the language of business and I was an entrepreneur. I didn't know what that meant when I was young, but I wanted to be that.
mhm,
And I wanted to start something. And so I knew knowing the language of business would be helpful for that, and I eventually got into wealth management, found that I really had a passion for that type of work, helping people with their financial lives, with achieving financial goals and coming up with strategies to do that. And so that's where I started a business. And the business is called RoseCrete Wealth Management. The rose that grew from a crack in the concrete through all the perceived impossibilities that rose grows, and I wanted to celebrate that same um that same ethos in my life, in the lives of other people. And so yeah, that was the I guess like the an, I mean, so much of my story people would call success, but that was one of the big public successes that people saw when I started closing deals and being recognized for that. And but then success shifted for me. I I I was receiving that external validation. I was receiving the awards and doing well in business, but mentally I was exhausted. I was depressed, anxious, grieving some significant losses. One of the people in my dream was one of the people that what I was grieving. And I had an anxiety attack. I had the worst mental health state of my life, and success shifted. And in that shift is when I found my own mental health journey, but also the advocacy for it as well. And I think, I mean, just it's something I've been pushing back on of like, am I chasing external validation still? I just talked to my therapist about shadow work around that now, having the awareness that that was driving me for so long. But in the advocacy space, I'm being recognized, I'm being celebrated. And I'm just like striking that balance of doing it for the right reasons as opposed to letting something that I cannot control drive me. And I'm still seeing, you know, the traditional success, but for me, the ultimate success is how I feel internally and how is my well-being. And I am in the best space that I've ever been in my entire life. So that was a long-winded answer to get to what success is and the journey to get there. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
No, I'm glad you took your time with that answer. I told you when we first met over in Belgrade and you were speaking, I told you I was like I felt like you were speaking to me, and I think I now realize why in my head I was like, oh, he's not even 30 yet. I think I combined it us because I'm about to turn 28. 28 was the number in my head. I was like, wait, hold on. He's actually, he said he was older than me, but it's just because so much of our story, to my point, I feel like aligns and overlaps. And hearing you speak about it again, just kind of, I can see a lot of the same thoughts that I've had. And that's why I can tell you like what you've accomplished to this point is inspirational because there's a lot of people who I think can look at your story and relate and want to envy the steps. And I know you're still on your journey to success, but just in you pursuing that for yourself, it is inspiring for others that can hear a lot of what you're saying. Again, I laid out Division I athlete, in a tough conference. I laid out a lot of those things because I relate to that. Like,
Hmm.
I also playing at a prestigious university at Columbia. Growing up it was all about football, and I couldn't name all the Ivy Leagues until they started
Right.
recruiting me. That it just, what I mean, it was all about football. Now, education, just like you, was pushed. And I had parents that didn't go to college. I'm first generation. So they knew I had to get there, but they didn't necessarily know what it looked like when I got there. And I'm sure you
Hmm.
can relate to that too, having to figure a lot of it out on your own.
It's hard, man.
It is. If you can speak to that a little bit, it is kind of hard to kind of enter that transition. What was that like for you to kind of to accomplish so much, but then it's like it's a reset and you have to figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. I think like when I look back, I think 10th grade on, I was doing things that my family hadn't done. And so it's just like, okay, I'm learning what it means to graduate. Like all there are fees to graduate. I gotta pay to go get this degree. Like what? And the luckily we had Common App. I think that was like kind of brand new when I was graduating from high school. But Common App to apply to a bunch of different universities under one application. But I was fortunate because the school I went to had so many resources. I had college counselors that were helping me every step of the way. Because in my head, it was like I know that I'm smart. I know that I can do the work, but I didn't know how hard college was. And when I took my ACT the first time, they told me I wasn't prepared for college, and I'm like, what? So I'm scared. Like I'm really scared, knowing that I want to do something ambitious and go to a prestigious university. And so I was self-sabotaging during that period of time because I think the shame, this is me reflecting back. I didn't know this at the time, but I think the shame that I carried of not feeling enough, not feeling like I belonged was something that kept me from really pushing, especially my senior year when it came to the field, when it came to the not the classroom, but the tests, the standardized tests. And I almost, jeopardized an opportunity because of that. But fortunately, I was able to, get my test scores up where they needed to be, and have so much support and help outside of the house. Like, and, my mom, she stressed education, but like to a certain extent, she didn't know. She just didn't know, and so luckily, I had a lot of people that were around me to help me and get me to that next level.
Yeah, and it's different, right? I think a lot of what you
Mhm.
said is a lot of the surprises once you get there, that you had to figure out. Now, I do want to talk a little bit more about your student athlete experience, right? We kind of share that as well. I'm imagining your answer will be something that anyone can use, but I do want to take a time for our student athletes right now, especially being that at Flawless, we're kind of working on an athlete course.
Nice.
So, what advice do you have for student athletes that are kind of go on this journey? But then also, too, let's talk to some of your successes. What's a highlight that you had during your tenure playing at Vanderbilt that you want to kind of reflect on and shine some light on?
I was I so crazy you asked this because I was literally just thinking back to my time when I decided to walk on. Because I knew I was good enough to be on the field. I knew I was good enough to play somewhere. And I was sitting with my buddies who weren't athletes. And I was like, man, look, I'm gonna walk on. And when I get my first tackle, you're gonna see me do a backflip on the field. Like I'm gonna go crazy because like this is little 10-year-old me living out a dream. Like when I was 10, I played in an all-star game at Vanderbilt Stadium, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be back here. And so I was like, man, when I get that first tackle, I'm gonna do a backflip on the field. And the crazy thing is, I walk on, I'm on team, I'm on special teams, and I'm run down, kick off, boom, get a tackle, first game of the season, and it's like at that point, it was just expected, right? And I forgot about the backflip. In a lot of period of time, a lot of times, I forgot about that 10-year-old. I forgot about that 10-year-old who had this dream to suit up, even not even to like go and make a play, not even, but to suit up. And so my advice to student athletes is one is like never forget that little 10-year-old or 7-year-old or whoever it is that had a dream, and it was a big dream for them. And if you're in a position where you're a student athlete right now, you're living out that dream despite how it may be going, because I could tell you, like, I had dreams to go into the NFL. I realized that wasn't going to be the case, but that didn't mean that what I was doing wasn't amazing. And so remember that 10-year-old and just how he or she would be so proud of the person that you are and what you're accomplishing right now as a student athlete. And then on top of that, I would say there's a lot of demand on your body, on your brain, on your time, energy, and to really take time for yourself and slow down, Like self-care doesn't need to start after you graduate and get into a job and you become this adult. Like self-care starts now. And that
Mhm.
may mean saying no. It may mean saying I'm not going out this weekend. I need to recover. I need to recover mentally, physically, emotionally, all of that. Really taking that time because I feel like there's so many pressures on student athletes to do and be and show up and appear, and now you want NIL and it's money, and it's just a lot. It's a lot on them. And so just like no is a complete sentence. And I know you probably can't say it to your coaches, but like for the things that you can say it to, sometimes it's needed. And so I would say that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I learned a lot when it comes to how burnout affects performers. Like you said, being grateful for the experience, being grateful for acknowledging what you accomplish. I think when you're a high performing athlete, it's very easy to always think about the next goal,
Hmm.
the next task, the next touchdown, the next play. So I think that you mentioned right, just being there, practice, right? I remember I
Hmm.
had an assistant coach that would say like where else would you rather be than right here?
Yeah.
Like
And
you
I
have to remember, like yeah, this is exactly where I would ask, I'm
exactly.
comfortable.
And you can
So,
speak to this too, being on the other side of it. It's like, man, like we can't get those days back, right? We can't get the conditioning back. We can't get
fish.
the drills back. We can't get that back. And it's like, man, I would love to have that moment. And so being grateful for every single moment, man, it's beautiful.
I used to hate hill workouts, and I'm over here making my own hill workout just you know, just because
That's
I
real.
missed it.
That's
Um,
real.
but yeah, man. I mean, again, so and then you trampoline that success, being a high performing athlete. And you already mentioned a little bit, but then you started your entrepreneurship and your organization, RoseCrete. I know you already touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to give the proper opportunity and time to because that story too is awesome. It's just the
Yeah.
name, the branding, everything associated with that. If you want to speak a little more on that.
Yeah. So after I was done playing ball, and I made like this is another thing to student athletes is like you're gonna need time, no matter whether it's right after school, due to an injury, sometime after professional ball, like or professional sports, to grieve, to
Mm,
grieve that period of who you used to be, who you were, how you viewed yourself, how the world viewed you, to who you are now or who you will become is hard. And so I grieved a lot. And a part of it was like my the year after I stopped playing ball, I didn't watch a single football game.
mm.
I was hard. Like and
Hard.
my boys were rolling. Like James Franklin was at Vandy. They were rolling and I couldn't
Oh,
watch it. It hurt my stomach and it hurt my heart, honestly. And and so I eventually, worked through some of that grief and then got to this place where I was like, I miss sports. I
mhm,
miss sports and I wanted to incorporate that with the work that I was doing. So I had the CPA certified public accountant's license. I'd worked in accounting and then I'm transitioning, getting my series license and being a financial advisor, wealth manager. And I'm like, how do I incorporate that? And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to merge finance and sports. And so the initial motivation behind RoseCrete was to be a wealth advisor to NFL players.
mm,
And that's where, the first up until COVID, that was the business. I was on the road. I was Senior Bowl, Combine, Super Bowl, Senior Bowl, like those were the big events where the business was done behind sports. And then, meeting with families, meeting with players, meeting with agents. And that was, it was exhilarating. Um, and it got me back involved in sports from a different angle. Like not everybody's gonna play professionally, but you can still be involved. Like every team has a photographer, every team has an accountant, every team has something that you can do that you can offer. And my role was managing money and finances. And so that was the initial drive for RoseCrete. And then when COVID hit, it was like writing on the wall. Travel stopped. I couldn't, and that was a big part of the business was to be able to be in front of people.
mhm,
And I realized that there was so many. It was like putting all my eggs in one basket with just focusing on professional athletes, just focusing on the NFL in particular. And so I started, I got back to my traditional network. I got back to the business owners and the entrepreneurs and the tech folks, the doctors, the lawyers that I knew, and started to grow the business that way. And but still coming back to that rose that came out of concrete, knowing that you didn't have to play ball to be a rose that came out of concrete. You could be that first generation lawyer. You could be that, shoot, third. It doesn't even have to be first generation, but to know that you've gone through adversity, to know that you have had to struggle in order to achieve the success that you've achieved, and realizing that so many people don't know about finances. Like, I wanted to help those people. The smartest people in the world will have trouble with their finances because it's not a matter of your intelligence. It's a matter of what we're exposed to. It's a matter of what we're taught. And a lot of times, our money habits and what we know about money is taught at home. And if that generation above you didn't have any knowledge, then where are you getting it from? And
Hmm.
so it shifted into, working with a lot, a wide array of people. And then, slowly, the percentages from athlete to non-athlete started to shift. And today, athlete is a very small percentage of my book, and book of business. And I think it's just a matter of evolving, adapting, and pivoting. I think that's something that, any entrepreneur, they know you have to pivot. You're going to have to pivot because life and business will throw something at you. It was a pandemic. Luckily, like, doors stayed open because, the market was doing bad. That's a drop in revenue. That's a lot. But to continue and to evolve throughout those challenges, that is the story of the rose that grew from concrete. So, yeah.
And I mean, when you talk about evolving and adapting, and we talked about identity, right, and the pain of giving up your sport. I even when I was in my master's at Florida State, I wrote a research paper on that, like athletic
Mm,
identity and how, especially men and people of color, people with certain socioeconomic backgrounds, that's their only avenue to success. And when that stops, it's like, what do you do next? And I love how you mentioned you evolved, you adapted, and you changed from, and that's something you could say you got from sports, I imagine, but you also mentioned in Belgrade, that's something you had from a young age, your ability
yeah.
to adapt and evolve from trauma, which on one end we can see, the fruits of that labor, right? Your ability to
Hmm.
kind of take pain, take trauma, and turn into something, turn into a rose out of concrete, right? But we also know that sometimes there's extra things, extra baggage attached to that when our only way to respond to trauma is like productivity or
Yes.
working hard, right? So just in terms of how you've done, you kind of mentioned just now how you did a post athletic career and in your business life, but like, let's talk about where it all started, like your ability to adapt and the pros and cons of that experience.
Yeah. The oh man, it's a sensitive subject, but I love talking about it because it's so real.
Hmm.
Like, I think, like, I was just it's crazy. I don't know. Maybe my mind was priming myself for this conversation, and it's just like going through these different moments in life. But I say this out of respect and love for my mom, but like, to be real and transparent about, when I was a kid, I used to have to count. I didn't have to. I trained myself to count down from 10 to before I asked my mom for anything, because it would produce so much anxiety because I didn't know what her response was going to be. Was it going to be the attentive, loving, caring version of my mom? Was it going to be the version of my mom that didn't respond? I've never said this out loud, so I may cry.
Wow.
Um, was it going to be the attentive version? Was it going to be the part that ignored me and didn't respond, or was it going to be the part that lashed out just at a simple request or a simple need that I had as a child? So I'd count down 10, 9, 8, mama, and I brace, right? And I think, that came from a place, right? Because I can remember that. That came from, much younger, of having needs and crying, or just asking, and those needs not being met. And so what my young version of me did was adapt to that environment and became very self-reliant. it became I became really good at recognizing the environment, scanning the environment, and knowing how to act in that situation in order to keep myself safe. It was a matter of survival. And I think, when we look at survival in the physical sense, like absolutely, yes, but like our emotional brains, like our emotional body, it feels those emotional threats just like they're physical threats to our life. And so, yeah, it's like you're screaming at me, but it feels like that's gonna lead to death to my emotional body. And so I'm protecting myself, I'm surviving. And I got really good at that. I got really good at recognizing patterns. I got really good at I think I adapted well while still being authentic to who I am. My views don't change. My personality doesn't change. One thing I think does change, going from the hood and talking and acting and dressing and moving in a certain way to a private school where people didn't understand me. I had to change the way that I spoke in order to be understood. I got a point to get across, and I need you to understand that and not sit there and ask me, what is that English a million times. That used to piss me off. But it started early on. It started early on of having, and this is before my recollection a lot of times, is having to adapt to the environment that was my home, that was our neighborhood. It was we had violence and things in the neighborhood as well. And being wise enough, having that internal wisdom to survive.
Yeah. First off, I mean, appreciate you, to give out something that you haven't mentioned before. That means a lot. That this has been a space that you feel like you could do that.
For sure.
Um, so much what you're talking about, I think, is again relatable experiences. And I'm a plug in next month, July being Black Indigenous People of Color Month. I think that's so important and relevant because of the lack of access,
Mhm.
awareness, understanding, safe environments that are kind of created for people that look like us, that are from other marginalized communities. It I think conversations like this are giving me hope for a better future, right? That our kids are gonna raise and have be able to have those conversations, right? Be able to ask dad or mom, for something simple without having the anxiety. But I also could say we may not be there just yet. So when you look at awareness months like, BIPOC month, I think some people call it,
Mhm.
you know, how does that make you feel that there is a push for awareness on this, and what do you feel like really needs to change as we look forward?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think it is important to have the months that are geared toward Black people, Indigenous people, other people of color. Um, for it to really have the amplification that it needs to say that this is important, right?
Mhm.
Because May, Mental Health Awareness Month, like that's for everyone, right? But it needs to be reinforced, right? And that's why we follow it up, right? Like Men's Health Month, like right after that, and then BIPOC, and so like it's like I think it helps to amplify the message and the importance of the advocacy that needs to be done, the awareness and the action that needs to be taken in order to alleviate and hopefully end some of the problems that we see with all the awareness months, honestly. But yeah, I think it has been. I wrote about this in my book where it's just me theorizing on why mental health, and I'm in I would say my family, but I think in the Black community, using a general term, I can't say that for everybody, but generally, has not been taken as seriously, and why we haven't sought treatment and help for our mental health. And I think it goes back to periods of time where there was no reprieve. You think
Mhm.
about slavery, you think about coming out of that slavery, then you got Reconstruction and Jim Crow, and there is very few resources for people to get help. And so if I admit that I need help and I don't get it, that's that little boy that's saying mama and not hearing and not getting that response. And so what do? You adapt. You
Mhm.
adapt to those situations, and adapting may look like I'm not going to show my weakness. It's eating me up inside, but I'm not gonna show it. Right? I'm gonna be silent and push through the struggle, and I'm gonna keep going. And then when you tell me that I need to help myself, knowing that I can't get the help, I'm gonna tell you you're crazy. Cause I'm
Mm,
not crazy. I'm not gonna go to a therapist. I don't need a therapist because they ain't gonna help me anyway. And what happens over time, who's the most protected person in our country? I can, America is a white woman. And so therapy, when we think of therapy from a historical sense, white women go to therapy and white women are therapists. And so they get the help that they need from the people that look like them, that have experiences like them, that it's representation. Well, even to this day, it's hard for me to find a black male therapist. It's hard for me to find a black woman who can help me with the things that I need from a mental health standpoint. Not to say that they're not out there, but it's more difficult, right? And so I think it has been a matter of, for so long, those resources and accessibility, it hadn't been there. And so it's been a form of an adaptation to survive. And I think we're at a point now where we can actually open up a little bit more and know that we can get that help, that there is responsiveness to it.
yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I've kind of endured some of the same struggles. The numbers might be different today, but I remember a few years back I did read a fact that said like only like 4% of like mental health, therapists, clinicians, whatever, were black, and like only 2%, with the PhD psychologists or
Mhm.
psychiatrists were black. And hopefully those numbers have increased since I last read that statistic. But
Yeah.
you're a math guy, an economics guy, an analytical guy. Is there anything systemic you look at that you're like, if we could change this, if we could affect or impact this, that will be a huge step into our future? Is there anything that you look at as a businessman and you're just like, I feel like this from a policy level, systemic level, is the next step we should take when it comes to addressing, mental health in minority communities?
I love this question. And I'm gonna just use it as a way to talk about some other things that I'm passionate about from that same perspective. I think one is when we look at crime, when we look at, because I think prison is a place, it should be used for rehabilitation, but it is often used as a place to further traumatize and further institutionalize an individual, and that perpetuates a cycle. And so
Correct.
I think when we look at the 13th Amendment, that is something that I've been passionate about, the amendment, or the exception clause in that amendment, which that 13th Amendment was the one that freed slaves. It said no one can be held for involuntary servitude, comma, except for punishment for a crime. And that except for punishment for a crime has, in my opinion, and in a lot of other people's opinion, led to mass incarceration. And I
Hmm.
think that perpetuated cycle of, one of my biggest issues from my mental health was the fear of abandonment, because my dad was taken away and went to prison, right? And why was he taken away to go to prison? Well, he committed a crime, and but we criminalize certain things. When, shoot, I look up now and there's a drugstore on every corner. There's people selling the same drugs that my dad got locked up for on every corner. And
Yeah.
so, I think when we look at that piece, I think that is a big part to changing the overall narrative. Another part that that I this is just my own personal theory, is when you look at the international standards on mental health versus the U.S., like the DSM-5, complex trauma is recognized internationally, but it's not here. And I think when that is the case, you have to reconcile with all the many, many people who have been traumatized and had intergenerational trauma for generations and generations and generations, going back to that period of slavery. We know that epigenetics is real when it comes to passing down trauma, and that, many people live with complex trauma that don't get the treatment that they need because it's not diagnosable as complex trauma. It
Hmm.
is, we diagnose symptoms. We diagnose you with ADHD and depression and this and that and that, when the trauma is what needs to be addressed. But acknowledging the trauma is we have to look in the mirror and be real with ourselves, and that's hard to do. And so I think those two things are big on my list, and I think if we could see some change there, we would see uh, greater change in the world of mental health.
Yeah, I mean, Reggie, hearing you speak, you're for one, you understand like the multi layers and the complexity that goes into mental health and how it's involved in a lot of different other relationships, uh, socioeconomic reasons, where you're born, how you're raised. On top of that, we've kind of touched on your amazing career to this point, all at a very young age. I don't know how you had the time to also write a book, but you already mentioned your book earlier, and if this conversation doesn't, inspire someone to read more about you in your book, I don't know what will. But I'm going to give you the opportunity to sell yourself a little bit. We talked about a little bit here. We talked a little bit about your book on our Insta Live conversation that I mentioned that's on our page. Again, without giving away too much, right? We still got to leave enough for the reader. Without giving away too much, what's just something you would want to say to someone that hasn't read your book just yet?
Yeah. Well, one thing I'm gonna say is which book, because then I got two books. Well, I'm a
Go ahead
co-author
and
of
talk
another
about
book.
it.
Look, so my memoir, Perseverance Through Severe Dysfunction, is the book that you're referring to. Breaking the Curse of Intergenerational Trauma as a Black Man in America. I think if you are someone who has experienced trauma in your own life, or think that you may have experienced trauma in your own life, it's a book for you to, one, um, help you feel less alone, help you feel less isolated, and that there is nothing wrong with you, that you are living a truly human experience. But the heartache and the suffering and the pain that you go through doesn't have to be your reality.
Mm.
There is light at the end of the tunnel. There's hope for a better future. And I think this understanding, hearing stories, sharing stories, I think is a way for us to connect, for us to heal, for us to grow. And I'm very vulnerable in this book, and I connect the dots between, a lot of my suffering and things that I think led to that suffering. And recognizing and giving grace to those who may have um, inflicted that pain onto me. And so I think that it helps with yeah, finding hope. And then if you're somebody who can't resonate, who doesn't see yourself as a Black man in America, because you're not, and you don't see yourself as someone who has experienced severe dysfunction or trauma, you're walking around people, you're working with people, you're loving people who have. And to have a glimpse into a world that you may not fully understand, I think it gives you that. It's a window, it's a mirror for those who have experienced the trauma, and it's a window into a world for those who haven't experienced it. And so if you love other people, if you want to be in there and supportive and compassionate toward other people, then I think it's a book for you as well. And so it's for everybody. It's for everybody.
So, two-time author,
Yeah.
Division One athlete.
The
Big,
other one is up there. It's right there.
I see
It's up.
with the red
Yeah, let me
lettering.
grab it real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So co-authored Approaching the Circle Red Carpet, Volume 2, with my man Dr. Dan Young, a whole bunch of other authors on here, but it's an anthology around the TEDx experience. And
Okay.
so I talk about my experience of leading up to my TEDx, and my chapter is kind of in line with what my message was during my TEDx, but it's titled "The Journey Back to Myself: Embracing Self-Love to Step into the Red Circle." Red Circle, and so it's all about embracing self-love, and what that looks like, what self-doubt and self-sabotage, going back to that, like what that almost caused, but then ultimately finding myself. So yeah, it's a good one.
No, I'm excited and I'm glad you share that with us. So, I mean, with all that you've accomplished to this point, your ambition is prevalent. What keeps you hungry? And then what is next? What's to come for Reggie? What's something that's you're
Mm.
looking forward to or you're working on that maybe we don't know about just yet?
What keeps me hungry is I fast.
Wow,
And
I
I
definitely want to learn more about this. 'Cause again,
yeah.
this is something I've been looking into. I promise.
Right.
But
No, I fast, and this is kind of a joke on like the hunger thing, but I just wanted to mention it because it has been such a beautiful thing for my overall well-being, from my physical health and my mental health, to fast and days without eating. It sounds crazy, like especially if that's like if you eat 3 meals a day every day with snacks and all that, like to not eat in a day, to choose to not eat in a day. Let me say that because not everybody is just fortunate enough to have food every day. But to choose to not eat every day and to go inward, understand that you can do hard things. That is, and to reap the benefits of having your body take care of itself. Your body is very wise, and your body will rid itself of waste and clean itself out. And I the inflammation that used to be in my body, the pains and aches that we had when we were playing football, like the chronic stuff, like those things subside, and it's amazing to witness that. And so I do that, um, but in line with your actual question, I think I want I'm an ambitious person, man, and I think I want to see where I can go and how many people I can help. And that's it. The bottom line is like I want to continue to heal and grow myself, and I want to, while I'm doing that, help other people do the same. So yeah, it shows up in many forms. Sometimes it's podcasts like this, sometimes it's speaking, sometimes it's just sitting down with a friend and having a hard conversation or having a long, deep conversation. And that's how I want to show up in the world. And so, oof, man, look, last night I was laying in bed and I was like, what if I don't wake up? Would I be proud of what I did that day and all the days prior to? And I was laying there, and not like in a suicidal way, not in like I'm not in any impending threat or anything like that, but I was just like just pondering that, and I was like, I'd be good. I'd be good.
awesome.
And so like I think every day I'm just gonna continue like it, like laying down and being proud of how I showed up for myself and how I showed up for other people. And yeah, having that answer be yes. And so I don't really know what's next. There are more books. There are more somebody sent me a screenplay. They're using me as a not my story, but they based the main character off of me, and I'm just like, what? That's crazy.
Different.
Uh and but yeah, man, I think I just want to continue to have vulnerable conversations with people like yourself, to give people permission to open up themselves so that they can heal what they need to heal.
I mean, Reggie, the hardest part about this conversation is the fact that we're kind of sticking to a script because I feel like we've been better off just being like, let's just hop on and start talking because
Facts.
there's a series of questions that you spark in my mind. I'm like, let me stick, to the script. But just like you were saying last night, I'm sure if I went through my camera right now, I'd have a saved image, but something along the lines of like, like you can't conquer the world until you conquer your mind, and then it's
Mm,
kind of this thread discussing, uh, fasting and like I said, one for, and it just goes to show the combination of the mental and the physical, how
mhm.
intertwined they are. And there are physical benefits to fasting, right? It eats all the diseases, and it goes against the paradigm that we've been taught of breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and maybe a couple,
Right.
right? But to go through and endure that process, you're healing your mind, your body, and then you're healing your mind as well. So to kind of come on here and hear you say that's something that you attribute some of your success to is amazing and very
Mhm.
motivating to hear that's something that you kind of have in your arsenal. Um,
Absolutely, man. And I'll paint a picture for people who think that's hard. Like, one, when I think look at dogs or look at animals, and dogs are like we can see them a lot more. But like when a dog gets tired, like my dog, it's hot as hell right now. Like when we come back from a walk, she just lays down, right? She's not going to work. She's not sniffing around. She lays down. Like, so when you're tired, rest. And then another thing, when dogs get sick, right? We know they're sick because what do? They stop eating,
Hmm.
So they have the wisdom to not eat during those periods of time when they're sick. They're gonna bounce back, right? We see a dog, they sick, they stop eating, and then when they feel better, they bounce back and they start eating again. But they know and they have that intuition to stop eating. And sometimes, we'll can I bring you soup? Can I bring you this? And it's like sometimes it's just I just need water and let my body take care of itself. And so I think that's important to recognize.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Reggie. I can keep you here all day, but I got a couple last questions for you, man. I don't know what of this interview we're gonna clip up because there's so many great gems you've dropped here. But what I do want to kind of end with here is, we talked about this a little bit before. We have this concept of a flawless world. So I do want to know what your ideal type of society does look like, but then I also want to know what's giving you hope that we're getting closer towards that ideal society.
Yeah. I don't remember what I said on the live, so this is gonna be all new. But I think ideal society looks like a world where each and every human can see their reflection in every other human around them, that we are the counterpart to each other, and that harming you harms me and harming the world harms myself. And so getting to a place where we see that in each other. And what gives me hope, uh I'm gonna say it. I remember what I said there, and it's people like you, my brother. It's you. It is you. It's like I again. I see a reflection, and you've mentioned it. Like there's so many similarities in our journeys, and what that does when we're able to see similarities in our human experience is it gives us empathy and understanding for our fellow man. And when we have that, we are less harmful to each other. I can lead with more compassion. I can lead with more grace and humility, knowing that you are going through an experience that I've gone through, that the people who are no longer here went through. Like there's shared experience there. And so having conversation like I let's keep doing this, bro. Like I love talking with you for
Here for
real, and we can go off script and we can talk for hours and hours and hours. Like let's do it, man, for real. So that gives me hope. Do we got time for a poem?
100%, a
Okay.
thousand
All right.
percent.
All right. All right. So this is I wrote this on January 1st this year, and it came to me. I was sitting in the bath and I was like I was talking to myself, but I think it'll speak to some more people. It's about time to change your ways. You've been saying tomorrow is the day for far too many days. How many moons must go by before you begin to see that your actions of today will result in the person you want to be? Insanity, they say, is doing the same thing but expecting something different. But no, 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 not you. You want to be magnificent. A word in Latin that means great deeds, but somehow you keep getting bogged down in the weeds. It's time today to change your ways, to commit to the process, even on the days it doesn't pay, even on the days that it rains, even on the days full of pain, even on the days you feel sick. You don't deviate from the standard because that's the whole meaning behind the words I commit. It's time to lock in because you deserve your best. Others can't cheat you of success because only you were given your test. Ace it for all the broken hearts and aces. Ace it for all the deep scars and smiling faces. Ace it because you, Trey, are destined for greatness. You've got everything you need to accomplish the goal. The only thing holding you back is the person you're afraid to get to know. This is what I'm really talking to myself. Look yourself in the mirror and be real with your reflection. You hate rejection, denial, criticism, and objection. You love praise and the pleasure you get from external validation. You like standing ovations from your words of inspiration. You fear uncertainty, but know that in every situation, when you gave it your all, you exceeded your wildest expectations. So step aside, old self. Stop getting in the way. Yesterday you said tomorrow. So today is the day.
I'm, I ain't gonna lie, I'm speechless. Like I feel like what a lot of times I don't know where I want to start dissecting that, but like I think what it comes down to for me is just like on one note alignment. I think you kind of mentioned some hints of alignment there, but more than anything, I feel like what you're doing mind you, it's hard to go from, you were in economics making a lot of money, right? I think Vanderbilt, Columbia, there's this draw to chase the money and chase that lifestyle, and what you're doing is hard. But I think, like you said, purpose, because what you're doing is you're casting a signal. You don't even know this, but you're casting a signal, and I'm grateful to God that I got caught in that signal, and then I'm, able to kind of learn from you and see myself in a couple of years. Is kind of almost what it feels like, a mirror. Like I literally feel like that's what the other side of my journeys and my battles will look like. So
Yeah,
if there's ever, as much as you inspire me, I hope I can give 10% of the inspiration back to you. Because
man, definitely.
is like there's a lot of people out there that need to hear your story and hear your mindset and hear your successes. Because like you said, the people who have come before you are during it, and you're that example and that hope that like there is success on the other side. So I appreciate you, man. I
Man, I appreciate you too, and I gained tremendous inspiration from you. Like that's what I'm saying. Like I need conversations like this because it's rare that someone has so many of the same shared experiences, and to be doing the work that we're doing, like it lifts me up. Like I got folks who have a piece of this and a piece of that from experiences, but so much. It means the world, man. So like I'm proud of you. I'm inspired by you. I'm rooting you on and we locked in, bro.
I appreciate this. This is real. This is authentic. I know we're at work on the video and the conversation, but I mean, this is as real as it gets, Reggie. And I
Yeah.
that I wish I had more questions for you, man. I know you're gonna inspire many more people just like me, man. I appreciate your time once again. I will take you up on the offer to do this more. This is something I think more people need to see and be a part of. So, Reggie, again, thank you, man, and I hope you have a great day because I'm gonna make sure I have one now, thanks to you.
Man, take care, bro. Much love.
Appreciate you, bro. God bless.